So today we're talking about guns. I know that a lot of people listening don't know anything or much about guns, but I'm thinking you might develop a curiosity when listening to my newfound interest. Not so new anymore. Like it's been a year or so since I've been really interested in guns and shooting targets, as well as maybe potentially going hunting if I get that opportunity. So we'll see. Um, and a lot of people in person have told me, oh, well, now that you mentioned it, like, where do you go shooting or how do I get started in shooting? Both guns and in archery as well. But today we're talking about guns. So I figured this would be a really insightful episode where we could get as much information as we could about like just the basics of everything, the basics of shooting, the basics of like hunting, all the questions that we probably have that we would love to ask an expert about it. Well, I'm doing that for you. So a couple of weeks ago, I attended an event called Lady Seed. Now, the term originates from an event in the US, or a project, I guess, that's called Project Appleseed, which is a 2-day program that teach the rifle marksmanship skills. I don't know why I stumble on that word, rifle marksmanship. That's what I'm stumbling on. But anyway, aka how to shoot a gun properly and accurately. So they brought it to Canada and termed it Project Mapleseed, which I love. And then this one was just like a women's only maple seed, which is called a lady seed. And that was where I met Adriel Michaud, who was one of the people teaching and demonstrating everything. And I think it's called a shoot boss. I forgot to ask him like exactly to explain that term in the episode, but basically, yeah, teaching things, instructing, showing us like the different positions and basically what to do. So he was one of the people doing that, and I immediately knew that he had a lot of expertise on everything gun related. But more importantly, he was such a nice and modest guy that I wanted to sit down and have a conversation with him and learn from him. And I'm so glad we did because we dived into a number of topics from how to even get started with a firearm, but also about hunting and action shooting and shooting competitions. So we definitely dived on a number of different topics related to guns. So, irrespective of what you want to use a firearm for, if you have any interest in acquiring one, or if you already have one, already got started, but want to know a little bit more about the next steps, so whether you want to go hunting or like shooting more accurately for targets or getting in shooting competitions or things like that, this is the episode for you. So let's get writing. Oh, hi everyone. Welcome back to Keshi's Corner. And I'm so incredibly excited today for our guest, Adriel. I should have asked you that before I started recording, but is your last name pronounced Misha?
Michaud, yeah,
Okay, perfect.
you got
So,
it.
perfect. So Adriel Michaud is, well, as we can see, if you're watching and not just listening, is surrounded by guns in his gun room slash safe. So he's like the gun guy or firearms guy, but he's so much. Like when I was writing up this bio, I was like, there's so much happening and I love it. So he's a hunter, shoot bus for Project Mapleseed in Alberta, PAL and RPAL course instructor, 3-gun shooter, YouTuber and podcaster, all things firearms. So you've been hunting your whole life and hunt, as I could read, primarily coyotes, whitetail deer,
Yeah,
grouse, and something that I heard gophers. We'll talk more about
gophers.
what
Yeah.
that is. I've never
All right.
heard about that. And so he has a website and a YouTube channel called The Hunting Gear Guy, where he reviews new gun and hunting equipment.
Hmm.
And that is not all. He is also one of the hosts of the Slamfire Radio podcast, which I will say has the best and most Canadian intro music ever. And I love it. And so, yeah, everybody, I guess grab your gear and get ready for a great conversation on all things I would say like basics of like hunting, shooting, shooting competitions, all those fun things. And yeah, let's just jump right in. Welcome to Kesha's Corner. I'm so excited for our conversation. How are you
Yeah.
today?
Thanks for having me on. Very, very good. I like going on other people's podcasts and just learning about what they're up to, and getting in touch, I guess, with some people who maybe don't get as much exposure to all the stuff that I'm into for my hobby, right?
Absolutely, because I would say like this one is probably going to be so different just because you'll have to remember to ex and I will make you remember to like explain some terms that for you just doesn't need an explanation anymore.
Hmm.
But did I miss anything in that intro? Tell like I guess you tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, I mean that covers. I learned how to shoot from my grandma when I was a little kid, shooting gophers, which that's a colloquial term. Their technical term is a Richardson's ground squirrel. They're like
Okay.
a kind of like a rat of the ground. They dig holes and that kind of thing. They got a whole pile of them around Calgary, less so around Edmonton here, but that's kind of how I got started. Got into hunting, and I've been hunting. Like I got my first deer when I was 13. So started doing that early on, and then as I got older, I started buying handguns and that kind of thing, but not really doing too much with them. And then I found out, oh, you can compete. There's this competition called Three Gun where you can use a handgun and a rifle and a shotgun, and you can compete. And a lot of people think competing, well, I got to be good for that. Nah, you don't. It's like
Yeah.
golf. You can do it anytime you want to, right? So I got pretty heavy into that. And then I started, yeah, actually started writing and doing videos for YouTube as a like a way of practicing, of getting better at it. Because I saw, I'm in marketing. I saw that
Okay.
I wasn't as good at the writing part. I was like, I want to get better at writing. Okay, well, I'll just practice writing. I'll write for a silly blog and we'll see what happens. And yeah, it blew up both like
Yeah.
the YouTube channel. I think I'm at 30 something thousand subscribers,
Yeah.
and the articles have been read by tens of millions of people, and that kind of thing. So yeah, they're both really good ways of kind of learning more and getting better at something. And then yeah, more recently, Project Mapleseed, when that started up here, that's Project Appleseed in the
Yeah.
US, and they brought it up. Have you talked about this to your listeners already?
Not at all. You can
No.
explain everything.
Oh, okay. So in the US, they have this civilian marksmanship program called Project Appleseed, where you learn marksmanship fundamentals. And most people don't actually learn marksmanship fundamentals. They just kind of make it up as they go along. Maybe they watch a couple of YouTube videos and that kind of thing. But that professional, like hands-on instruction, is helps with your growth as a marksman, as a shooter. It really like layers on those skills. And some Canadians went down. You met Kelly, one of the founders, and they got to be Appleseed instructors. And then when they came up to, they brought it up to Canada as a Canadian thing. Project Mapleseed. We do a 1 day here, and I've been doing those since 2018, something like that. So I guess 5 years now. Oh
Wow.
no, more, 6.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Pre-COVID, it's
6
hard,
years.
so hard to do the math for
I
that.
know. It does not even count. Like the COVID years even count anymore. I don't know.
Well, we tried to do them during the COVID years. It was tough. It was tough to do them during the COVID years there,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, we got through, and we're continuing to do those. That's now across the country, so it's a standard program across the country. We're all volunteers for it. We all just volunteer our time to teach marksmanship. And then the most recent thing I've got into is PAL and RPAL instruction, actually doing the certified courses for people in the Edmonton area here, and I've been loving it. It's been great.
Amazing. So you said you're in marketing, so you also have another job and on top of doing all of that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought that was like already a full-time thing, more than full-time, but okay, wow. That is crazy. But okay, so a term that again going back to super basic because my audience I talk about kind of like all different things in my life and
Hmm.
as I said in Project Maple Seed, I'm super new to shooting, so
Hmm.
then I think of my audience as more like my friends who are also like, oh well, now that I'm hearing about it, I'm interested and I'm curious, but I never thought about it before kind of thing. So maybe because English is also not my first language, but can you describe what marksmanship actually even is?
Yeah, so marksmanship on within the Project Mapleseed scope is how you can accurately shoot a rifle. So we teach you everything from building a stable position. So whether you're shooting prone on your stomach or you're kneeling or seated or standing, you need to build that stable position so that the gun doesn't wobble so much. Then you need to go through your 6 steps of firing a shot, which is kind of like a very institutionalized like checklist way of firing the shot, making sure you squeeze the trigger, all that kind of thing. And then the last thing is natural point of aim, addressing your body, pointing your body to the target rather than muscling it over, which can, as you saw at the maple seed,
Yeah.
cause inaccuracy. So with those three things, that's what we teach in the course. We teach people those three things, and they can become more accurate. You can shoot it with a 22, which is a low caliber, low recoil. It's not going to hurt your shoulder. It's not going to hurt your pocketbook either because the ammo's
Yeah.
cheap on it. And
Yeah.
we use those so that it can be an inexpensive way to build this skill, this interesting skill. It's kind of like a archery, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of the fundamentals we teach are so super similar.
I also got into that at the same time. Like actually while after I did my PAL and RPAL and because it took so long, I was like, I'll get a bow in the meantime, I
Oh
guess.
yeah.
Amazing. And we'll talk about also like a beginner gun later that again, because we need so much like hours of practice, I guess. But before even that, would the maple seed or apple seed in the US be like the first step for somebody? Or we talked about the PAL and RPAL. If somebody is just like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm interested, what would be my first step? How do I get started in anything? Do I just go on Amazon and buy a gun? Can I do that? Or like, I don't
Hmm.
know, just like, yeah, like, why is it locked in Canadian Tire?
I think if it was a friend of mine asking, I would say don't get your pal just yet. Go do a maple seed right now if you can, if the scheduling works for it, because what you're going to find is you're going to see what you like. You're going to shoot a rifle and you're like, oh boy, I loved that it was scoped. I love that it was low recoil. I like the semi-automatic instead of the bolt. I thought I'd like the bolt more, but actually the semi-automatic's where it's at. So I think if you do a maple seed first, it'll kind of like give you some hands-on experience with some firearms because we have loaner firearms, right? I bring 4 to 6 rifles to every single event that I shoot boss at. So that might be a good way to start rather than. So what I see a lot at Maple Seed is someone will buy a gun and then they'll show up and it'll be inappropriate for marksmanship
That's what
fundamentals.
happened to me. I had an iron sight and just couldn't see anything.
Yeah, yeah. And then, but if you did the maple seed first, then you'd be like, oh, I need a scope on this. I need to put a scope. And,
Yeah.
maybe something around $100 is all I really need. And I can put one of those on and that'll add to the accuracy and add to my enjoyment of this thing and my accuracy. Right. So I might start with someone with a maple seed if they can. If they can't, yeah, go do a PAL RPAL course. Might as well do both of them because that RPAL course like kind of expands your horizon. So just for your listeners, the PAL
Yeah.
course, that's for your non-restricted firearms. That's for like rifles and shotguns and that kind of thing. Your RPAL or restricted possession and acquisition license is what the abbreviation is for. That one allows you, well, you can't buy handguns right now, but you can borrow them. You can borrow them for up to a year. So if you know someone with handguns, you're like, hey, can I borrow a handgun so I can go to the range and shoot it and that kind of thing? And that's really all you can do with handguns. You can't take them anywhere other than to the range and back, but you can do that. And that legislation may change in the future, so we might be able to do that kind of thing again.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask, and that was one of my questions actually. Do I got both at the same time just in case
Hmm.
because it's a free, so it's like just in case later I can buy one when
Hmm.
everybody's gonna be like rushing to get their opal, I can just go and get it, get the gun. But would so it looks like you would recommend getting both at the same time because usually we can do like one like the day after or something. You can do
Oh
it
yeah,
really close.
do them both in the same weekend, and it's done, right? And then you
Yeah.
have them both, and it just gives you one license, but it just says you're good to go for both of them. And then you can get those handguns later, or you can borrow them, or there's also some restricted rifles and shotguns. There's typically short barrel semi-automatics, that kind of thing, and they're a lot of fun. I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So and to be fair, I didn't know anything about guns. I didn't know anything about guns at all.
Hmm.
I would say like 2 months before doing that. So if I was able to like put my head together, like, and I'm not saying like it's the easiest. For some, I was first of all actually the only girl in that class in both
Hmm.
classes, and I was a little surprised because I came like all in pink and everything. It was like, oh, I'm so excited to see the other girl shooting, and I was just like a bunch of Alberta country boys, and I'm like, oh. Okay. And I'm like brown girl there being like, okay, a little out of place. Don't know the first one how to like hold anything, but I was a good student, like really
Hmm.
paying attention throughout. And I was able to actually do well in so, like there's a written test and then the practical like handling
Hmm.
it. And then I was really happy about that and gained a lot of confidence as well, which is really good because then
when I came even to like the maple seed and things like that,
Hmm.
I was not like, I don't know how to hold that. I don't know what to do. So
Hmm.
that was awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's I've heard other people say that about the courses. It's really good for confidence. They were kind of like unsure about it before, but after they go and take the course, they gain a lot of confidence. And in terms of like the amount of females inside the courses, on average, your experience is correct. More guys to get their licenses than females, but one of the places I do licenses at Sherwood Park, and I'm getting a lot more females there.
Okay.
A lot of maybe in the family, like the guy might have a license and then his wife
Yeah.
might not, and a lot of them are like, oh, why don't you go get your license too? So a lot of them are coming out, and some of my classes 50-50, maybe even more females.
Wow.
And yeah, almost every class has someone brown in it. It's that's
Really?
at least one, or yeah, at least one. But like I've
Oh,
never ever had a class where it's just white people.
just
It's
white
always been
guys.
a yeah, it's always been a mix of people going out to those things.
And I don't mind either. Like if it was too, it's just kind of like I came to Canada. I'm not expecting to see the same people like I was in Mauritius. But I was just like,
Hmm.
oh, I thought there would be at least like one like other girl, at least in Alberta, that would
Hmm.
like hunting, or maybe they just already have it younger. I don't know.
Maybe it depends. In those rural areas, pretty much everyone's got
Yeah,
licenses, everyone's got guns. Yeah.
right. But anyway, so now we've got this and want to get into, let's just say, actually before we even get into like hunting, I was getting into
Hmm.
hunting, but then where should I go to purchase a firearm? Would that be like a new one? Should I go to like Cabela's or again Canadian Tire or something? Or things like, is it Gun Post, I believe, that you get like a
Hmm.
used one? What would you recommend? Because there's like the I don't know how um I guess safe to purchase this one is compared to the price and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on what you're getting. I'm a notorious cheapskate, so I like to buy things on sale whenever I buy them. And one of the
Hmm.
so we have this licensing in Canada. One of the cool things about the licensing is that it allows you to buy stuff online.
Yeah.
So you don't have to buy from your the local Canadian Tire is going to be a little bit expensive. They're like,
Yeah.
or a lot expensive, like quite a bit more than other places would be. So
Yeah.
if I know what I'm after, I might just buy something online and have it
Okay.
mailed to my house. Yeah, I don't need to. I don't need to go in store to get this kind of stuff. Not on Amazon. Amazon doesn't allow those kind of sales, but
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how they would do
same day shipping.
it.
No,
Just
they wouldn't do that. But there's a couple of different places. Cabela's is a big one in terms of inexpensive guns and ammo. Tenda out of Ontario is really good. Bullseye North, SFRC. These are all Ontario ones. There's also some in BC. But yeah, I do a lot of my buying online as well as locally as well.
okay, perfect. So either
Mhm.
or, depending on, I guess, like what people prefer. They might want to go in the store for their first one to kind of see and
Mhm.
hold a few ones. And then I feel like after a while, most people just end up buying online and just scrolling all day to look at guns.
Yeah, well, so sometimes the local stores will do a price match too. So
Okay.
even if you found a good price online, if you want to go to your Cabela's and take a look at it and say, yeah, this is the one I want, then you can say, hey, do you guys do price match? And I know Cabela's does, and some other places
Oh,
do too. So you can still buy local and like give them your business and handle the gun just to see if it's what you like, and yeah, buy it right
interesting.
there. And then no shipping time,
Awesome.
right? Just
Yeah.
pick it up and take it straight to your house.
Perfect. Absolutely. That's love that.
Yeah.
That's giving me ideas on getting other guns. But now hunting, because I'm interested in getting into hunting, but have
Hmm.
no idea where to start because I don't really know anyone in it. So
Yeah.
then since you're in Alberta as well and Edmonton, what would you recommend somebody around here to do to get started? I heard there's a course
Yeah.
as well for the
Hmm.
hunting, but then also I know people don't like to say where to go hunting because that's a like personal secret, but
Hmm.
how do we find people that we can go with, for example?
Oh, how do you find people you can go with? That's a hard one because again,
Okay.
people don't want to let out their secret fishing spot and secret hunting
Yeah,
spot.
fair.
The course is online. The course you can take online. So AHIA's website there has the Alberta Hunters
Yeah.
Education course, and it's a pretty good course online. There's lots of good photos and audio and all this other kind of stuff. My kids just recently took it here. Well, not
Oh,
recently, but yeah, they both got their hunting licenses.
how
And
old are they?
well, one was 12 when he took it, and the other one was probably like 12 or 13 as
Oh,
well.
I love it.
You can shoot as a youth, you can shoot grouse from 10 and you can shoot
Yep.
deer from 12, 13, kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
it's pretty young, and grouse is probably where I'd start. So you take your hunter's ed, great. You may try through a HIA to find a mentor, to try to get them to match you up with a mentor, because sometimes they're able to do that kind of thing. It's a very in-demand service, so you might not be able to
Yeah.
get anyone, but that's one option.
Okay.
And then in terms of places to go, um, from Edmonton, I would go west. So I would go either to Whitecourt area, or I'd go to the Edson area. And around those areas, there's all this lease land, these oil leases. A lot of those areas, as long as there's not an active well, you can hunt there. So you can go down these lease roads, and there's going to be grouse and this kind of thing. And I would do grouse first. I would go to one of those areas, park, hike for a couple of kilometers, and you're going to see a grouse. And if you've got that 22 and you've got those marksmanship fundamentals from
Yeah.
Mapleseed, you're going to be able to take it. Some people use a shotgun on grouse. I prefer a 22 because it's less loud and it's cheaper, and
You
I
lose
get more
less.
meat.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
because if you get any pellet in the grouse meat is actually fantastic. In terms of wild meat, it's very easy to eat. It doesn't taste gamey or weird or anything like that. It's just chicken. So
Yeah.
it's a great first game animal to go after. They really rely on their camouflage. So you
Okay.
might be hiking along and you might see one 3 meters away from you, and they'll just stay still because if they move, the camouflage doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
So they'll
Okay.
just stay there. So if you've got sharp eyes, you'll see them, and then you can take them right there. And then the other cool thing about grouse is that if you're staying out there, if you're camping, or if you just want a lunch, you can do some instant noodles, fry up some grouse meat right there, do some chicken noodle soup right on spot, right? So it's pretty easy like that. And so that's why I would start with grouse, and I would go to one of those public areas where you can hunt.
Okay, perfect. I've heard of, and I actually don't know if there's any in Alberta. I'd never heard about this before, but I've heard
Hmm.
of waterfowl recently, and
Hmm.
how that's also like one of maybe like a beginner. I mean, they were talking about like more so kids getting into hunting. That's a
Hmm.
good beginner one, just because you don't have to be completely still, completely quiet. You can still talk until like the point of there, whereas for some other ones, you have to be wait like very patient kind of the whole time, and some
Hmm.
people might just like not be able to do it at first. So do you have any experience in that?
Yeah, waterfowl, yeah, ducks and geese and that kind of thing. So you can talk, but you can't really move, and they're like, bird's eyesight is very sharp, so you do
Okay.
need to be well camouflaged, and they can't see you or anything like that. But that's possible. Yeah, I mean there's geese, ducks. You need a wet spot where you can get that kind of thing, and there's a bit more equipment required for that because okay,
Mm.
you're shooting a duck over a pond or something like that, and it drops into the pond. Now what? You
Ah,
got to go
okay.
in and get it,
Yeah.
right? So you got to
Yeah.
have a boat, or you have to have waders and hope that the water doesn't go above your waders. That'll be
Oh, okay.
like a bib kind of a thing that goes up here, and it's waterproof, right? So you walk through the swamp with that thing and it get all gross and whatever, and grab your duck and bring it back. Or
Oh,
if you're
okay.
really into ducks and geese, you get a dog, and the dog jumps in for you.
Oh,
They
that
go
too.
get it. Yeah, so there's just a little bit more equipment. Whereas grouse is like 22, and you go out in the bush and you stumble upon them and shoot one or two and bring it home, kind of a thing, right?
And then how would you get promote yourself to deer? Because that's something that I want to
Hmm.
eventually get to. Deer and elk. Well, also I wanted to ask, what are some animals that Alberta is known for? Because I heard elk is a big one that people come from other
Hmm.
provinces to Alberta to hunt.
Yeah, the most common one is whitetail deer. That's what you're going to see a lot of, is whitetail deer. You can get a general license for it, so you don't need to like win a lottery or anything like that to get a tag for one of those things. And they're the most common deer that you're going to run across, much more so than
Perfect.
elk, much more so than mule deer, moose, all that other kind of stuff. For elk, depending on the area, it may be draw, or there might be a general tag available that's just for, it's very specific. It's like only the male elk, and only between this many and this many points on their antler. It's confusing. So
Yeah.
whereas the whitetail deer one, it's like, if it's brown and it's a whitetail, just take it. Buck,
Okay.
doe, doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
the time of the season that we're hunting in, there's not going to be any fawns or anything like that around. They should have all had at least from the spring to get a bit bigger.
And what's the hunting season in Canada? Is it because I've heard mostly like November is when people go, but in
Yeah,
November is just a month. Is it like longer than that? Is it depending on the animal?
it depends on the animal. It depends on the area. So
Okay.
Alberta manages our wildlife with all these wildlife management units, or WMUs. Those are little areas on the map that they'll kind of like break it down into a smaller area. And they say, okay, for this area, you can hunt deer from November 1st to 30th. Oh, but this area over here in the middle of nowhere where there's more deer than people, September 15th is fine. You can start then. So they might
Okay.
open it earlier or have it open later, depending on the season and really what conservation officers are trying to do in that area. That because it's
Okay.
an active management. If you don't actively manage the number of deer, more people hit them on their cars. that's
Yeah.
that's one thing that happens. And then the other thing that happens is you end up with these waves of like, oh, way too many deer, and then they eat all the food, and then they all die in the winter, and then there's less deer the next year, and it kind of evens it out. So they allow for earlier hunting in some areas, or they give extra tags in some areas, just to again more actively manage that population. Just east of Edmonton, there's an area that WMU where you can get 3 deer tags for $25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but you have to use a shotgun or muzzleloader or bow and arrow. They're limiting what you can use because it's a little bit more
Okay.
built up. It's a little bit closer to civilization, so they don't let you use the high power rifles that you'd normally use on deer, right?
Would a shot, I have so many questions. Would a shotgun just be less loud in because I've never used a shotgun yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is
The volume would be about the same. The accuracy is way less, and you'd use a slug. You typically use a slug with that shotgun. And if you ever look at a slug, they're not very aerodynamic, so they're not very good
like
for.
big.
Yeah, they're really big. They're kind of squared off.
Yeah.
They're not very slippery through. So they slow down very quickly, which means they
Okay.
lose velocity and energy, and they're not that accurate to begin with. But within 100 yards, yeah, I think that they're fine within 100 yards.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a question about like the tags first. So
Mm-hmm.
we talked about how there are some that have a draw and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming things like moose, so how the tag works is you purchase your tags and then you go out and hunt that
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is, and then you put your tag on them. Like how does the
Yeah.
tag work? And also tell us a little bit more about like the draw that you have to do for some
Yeah.
others.
So if there's more hunters than animals that conservation officers want hunters to shoot, what they'll do is say, okay, in this area, we're only giving away 5 moose tags. And they'll do a special lottery where it's only, okay, if you put your name in, yes, I want to get a moose this year. So you put your name in for it. And then if you're drawn, they'll say, yes, you win the ability to buy a tag for moose in this area, or elk in this area, or bighorn sheep, or what have you, whatever you're going after. So if you win that ability, you buy a tag. That tag says this tag's only good for this little square on the map. It's only good for that area. You go out hunting, and if you get something, it's like a sticky tag. You stick it on its leg or whatever after you kill it.
But then do you send that leg to somebody or
No,
like
you
take a
just keep it,
picture?
in case Fish and Wildlife comes around. And they're like, oh, I see you've shot a moose. Do you have your tag on it? And you have to have your tag on it, right? So that's
Mostly for
that
transporting.
transportation. And once you use the tag, you can't reuse it because it's made of this sticky material that just like destroys itself when it's done. So it's
Okay.
a one-time use, and it's your proof that you've got your one animal, I guess.
But once you have it at home and you're like doing, because some people like
Some people will
use
take
whole
it to the
parts for,
butcher. Some
yeah.
people will do it themselves. I do it myself. I
Oh,
typically with deer, I go with some friends every year, and we'll make a bunch of jerky and sausage and whatever else we want to. But some people don't have all, like, maybe they don't know how to butcher an animal, or they want it done professionally. They'll take it to a butcher and have the butcher do all that for them.
how long does it? I feel like I heard you say it takes maybe like 3 days in one of the episodes or something for a deer. And also,
Uh,
how does somebody get into that if they're interested? What equipment should they get, and what
mhm.
resources are there to help them butcher their own
So
animal?
yeah, I like it. That's, if you can, you're supposed to let them hang for, and you would do the same thing with a cow, right? You would, if you were butchering a cow, it would hang in a temperature controlled environment for some time. And that's so that the blood can drain out, and that's so that the meat is going to be better. It's a better way of aging the meat. If you don't have that kind of time, well, then you have to butcher it a little bit sooner and kind of take care of it. So in terms of equipment, you would need something to hang the deer up. That's typically a gambrel. It's kind of like this metal W shape kind of a thing that hooks onto the deer's legs. And then you need some rope or something to put it up in a tree. You could use a rope block, which is, it's got a bunch of pulleys on it to make it easier to pull the deer up. That's going to be a little bit more inexpensive. Or you could use a chain block. That's like mechanics use to like lift engines out of cars and that kind of thing. Again, throw it up in a tree or in your garage to leave the deer. Garages are nice because they're a little bit more temperature stable than outside, and you don't have to worry about coyotes stealing your deer and that kind of thing.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. And then beyond that, the equipment required a sharp knife, and depending on what you want to do for processing, if you want to do jerky, maybe a smoker. Maybe you already have a smoker. If you don't have a smoker, you want to do it in your oven, you can do that. Throw some liquid smoke on it. It's fake smoke, but get enough. You can get started like that. Sausage, you need a sausage stuffer. There's no way around that one, and those are about $100 kind of a thing. And then beyond that, I mean, if you just want to do cuts, you can do like butcher paper or Ziploc bags. Just put them in a Ziploc bag and chuck them in the freezer, kind of a thing. Yeah, those all work.
And how much meat comes from one? Well, one to like grouse and stuff, like a little animal versus like a big animal. Like, I'm not gonna say a moose. How many people are gonna get a moose? But like a deer.
Yeah, deer. Depending on the size of the deer, it
Yeah.
might just end up being like 50 pounds. Maybe you'll get 50 pounds out. So that sounds like, boy, but the deer was 150. Yeah, but that 150 is like bones and fur and guts and all that kind of stuff that you're not going to want to eat. So there's really not that much that you're left with at the end of it. But that depends, because if you get a big buck, it could be 2-3 times that much.
Yeah.
With a moose, and like moose, yeah, people do take moose. Elk are about the same. You don't have enough freezer space for a full moose.
Yeah,
So
but I was thinking like how many people are actually gonna get a moose, because it's so like, I mean, yeah, I've heard of it. It's so difficult to get a tag for a moose.
it depends on the area. So around Edmonton, yeah, because it's a built-up civilization. There's lots of people here and less moose. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, moose are
Sure.
much more common, and that's what you're going to be doing. If you were in the north of Alberta, for example, you might not even hunt deer. You might just go after moose. The meat's better. The moose meat, you can make steaks and that kind of thing. You can do steaks with deer. It's too lean. They're a very lean animal, and their fat is kind of gross. It's kind of sticky, and it's very, especially if you get a buck, it's very gamey, like a male deer, very
I've
gamey,
heard
weird tasting.
because most people like want to go for the buck because it's like the trophy, like it's, oh my God, it's like the bigger the better, but then the doe or like the little ones are actually more tender. But I was like, don't say that. Venison is one of my favorite meats. I love it. I've never had it in Canada here. But I'm assuming it would taste similar. I have had the opportunity to try moose once at the Sherwood Park Fish and Game Association at one of the ladies' outdoor events, and I actually really loved this. It was weird. For me, it was like, it reminded me of venison a little bit, but it was harder. But I loved it, and I was like, how many people can even say they ate moose? So I loved it. Maybe in Canada, yeah. But
Yeah, and that's one of those like rural urban divides, right? In the city, you're going to find less people who have maybe had moose and that kind of thing, whereas in the rural areas, almost everyone.
Yeah, I think my next one that I keep saying I want to try is bear. I've heard it might not always taste the best, but I was like, just for experience. I've tried crocodile, so I want to try like bear, or eventually maybe be able to like hunt one. And now my brother went and told my relatives in Mauritius, when you come to Canada, Keshi's gonna hunt a bear for you. I'm like, that's not what I said. That is not what I said, because they're coming maybe next year, so no, not happening.
Yeah, bear would be good. It's that meat you got to be careful with, because they eat so much decomposing stuff that they get worms and that kind of thing. And then you can get that unless you cook it to a certain temperature. You do need to be careful making sure that you cook that meat properly. And it's kind of greasy. Like bear meat's kind
Okay.
of greasy, and it's not my favorite, but I know a lot of guys. I know some people who make it really well, but not my favorite. It's not an easy meat to use. Like I would say that elk and moose are very easy meats
Yeah.
to use, and you can use more standard recipes. You can do a roast in an instant pot, throw some carrots and
Yeah. Fair.
potatoes and onion in there, and you're good to go. It's very simple, right? But with
Yeah.
bear, I don't think you'd be doing that same thing. You might have to do something a little bit different to it. Again,
Yeah.
depending on the bear.
And I heard if it's the ones that eat salmon, it tastes less good because it tastes more fishy, but the ones that eat blueberries, it tastes better.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of bears that eat out of dumps, dump
Oh,
bears. And if you got one of those, good luck.
oh, I don't want to dump there. Oh, maybe I
Doesn't
don't want
sound
it
good,
on my
does it?
Yeah, no, not very much so. Oh God. But well, and actually forgot I glossed over that earlier, but you mentioned about how if there's too many like deer, for example, they kind
Mhm,
of become a nuisance and people get in more like car accidents and things like that.
mhm,
And that's something that's important to mention because even me before, when I didn't hear it from people who actually go out and hunt or have gone out and hunt,
mhm,
I had this blinders on like people usually do where they're like, "Oh, well, a deer, it's like so innocent and it does nothing. Like, why are you gonna go out and shoot an animal or even any other animal? Even those that they do go to the grocery store and buy, they're like, "Oh, why would you like kill an animal? That sounds so cruel." And I was like vegan a couple of years ago for like 6 years, so it's really
big
interesting that now
change.
I'm like, yeah, I don't even, no, we don't need to talk about that. But anyway, so I definitely a change of heart and of perspective, but I definitely listen to a lot of people, farmers and hunters and things like that about their perspective. And yeah, when we think about it, well, what if we don't kill, for example, deer, and then we've seen what one car accident from like
Mhm.
a deer crossing the road could be. So do we want 20 times more of that or like however? Because there's a lot of people hunting deer every year.
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of deer hunted every year. And it's car accidents, it's well just actively managing the population. If you don't actively manage a population, the natural causes take over. And instead of you shooting that deer might maybe just starves to death in the winter, right? Because there's not enough food that it can get to. So some people think about like shooting a deer as something that's cruel, but nature's there's all sorts of cruel deaths that await that deer. There are no
Yeah.
like no deers die of old age. They die from
Yeah.
other animals eating them, or them getting sick, or them not getting enough food and starving to death over a season. So the shooting them is probably the most humane way of that animal dying.
Yeah, the quickest death, I would say. Well, I guess
Hmm.
if we learn to actually shoot well, because if we're also just shooting to injure the animal, that's also not good, which is, I guess, something we can talk about how to make
Hmm.
sure that when we're going out to hunt, we have a well, the ethics behind it
Hmm.
as well of like, oh, we're gonna, for example, if it's for food, or for whatever reason, we're gonna try to not just make the animal suffer endlessly, but just like kill it in the most humane way possible and respect that animal's life as well. Do
Hmm.
you have any tips on that?
The maple. I keep coming back to the maple seed here, but
Okay.
one of the cool things that you get out of that is you understand what you're capable of for accuracy from different positions.
Yep.
Because when we're walking around and we see a deer and we're standing, but that deer is 200 meters away, do we take the shot? Now that you've done maple seed, I can't make that shot. 200 meters, what are
No.
you crazy? No, that's impossible, right?
Far.
So you would know, okay, I can't take that shot standing. You're not going to like just start flinging lead just for the sake of it. You might take a knee, or you might go prone, or you might grab a tree and rest your rifle on a tree or something like that. And now you will feel comfortable with that shot because you know what your accuracy potential is. So that's one part of it. The other part is just knowing the animals really well, being really close to deer all the time and hunting them for as long as I have. If you know where the vitals are and you get
Yeah.
we're generally aiming for the heart and lungs on a deer. And if you get a double lung shot, which is a very common, it's a fairly easy shot to take. That deer will be dead within a minute.
Okay.
So it's quick, And the other important part about making that great shot is that you don't have to track it. You don't have to like go
Yeah.
find it and maybe it gets away, or it's surprising because a number of times I've gone hunting and I've probably killed, I don't know, 50 or 100 deer through my life. But the amount of times where I go, okay, I shot that deer and it's only 30 meters away, but I can't see it because it's camouflaged, right? It's like laying down. So it can be hard to find them. So you always want to make sure you get a good shot, a good ethical shot, because you might lose the deer,
Yeah.
or if you don't get it in the heart and lungs and you get back into the guts and that kind of thing, now you have to deal with that while you're butchering the deer, and it's gross.
Yeah, even like butchering, I heard you have to know how to do it to not just get gut juice all over you.
Yeah. That's a real risk. Yeah, but again, with a good shot, and
Yeah.
one of the cool things for butchering, for example, skinning and gutting a deer, YouTube.
Yep.
A buddy of mine shot a deer for his first time, and he pulled his phone out and he went on YouTube and he started following along as the guy, and he was doing it as the guy was doing it on
Yeah.
YouTube.
How long do you usually have until either the meat goes bad, or there's if it's in an area where there might be bears that they decide that they want the, the meat instead? Because it
Uh,
takes a while
hmm.
to, or do you just take the whole animal away and then do that later?
So if I'm hunting somewhere and I've got a truck, I'll chuck the whole thing in the truck and go do it like back at base camp, or back at the garage or something like that. But I want to get that done generally within an hour. I don't want to let it sit there
Okay.
for a long time. The if I'm way out in the middle of nowhere and I got to cart it out, then I will skin and gut it, because I can usually lose like 75, 80 pounds out of the deer just by doing that, by taking the guts out and the skin off and that kind of thing. You still need to leave proof of species and proof of sex on it, because again, you have a tag for one kind of
Yes.
animal, so you need to be able to prove that it's that kind of animal. So you can't take everything off, but you can take most of
Interesting.
it off. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That I've never heard that or thought about that, but that's a good point because if it's not recognizable, then you'll just stick a tag on anything. But okay,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the butchering process earlier and like
Mhm.
using a pulley and stuff like that, is that something that realistically a girl could do, or would that be a little hard, or maybe sometimes then there are more like other equipment that make it easier? Even that, and also
Mm.
like bringing
Mhm.
a deer. I figured people don't usually go hunting alone, but I don't know.
You're correct, because dragging that deer, let's say that deer, let's say you got a good shot on it, lungs, and it goes straight into the bush. It can go 60, 70 yards into the bush. And now what? Well, now you got to drag it out of there.
Yeah.
And that can be like you do need some muscle for that. So
Okay.
either you need another person, or it's going to take you a really long time. And
Okay.
then you need to load it up in a vehicle, and you need
Yeah.
to be able to pick it up off the ground. If it's
Okay.
200 pounds,
Yeah, I'm
that's
not going to be able to do that
yeah,
realistically.
yeah, you'd want another person with you for that. And then just for the camaraderie, and sometimes when some hunting spots are really best done with two people, where one person can look one way and then one person can look the other way, and you just sit there and wait for the deer to come out. And if they don't come out, then you could have someone to chat with on the way home.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
And then the last question on hunting before we can talk a little bit about competition, like action shooting.
Mhm.
Um, are there in Alberta, I wanted to ask if you've hunted in other provinces as well, but I've heard about how you can go bow hunting for a period first in
Mhm.
some areas,
Yeah.
and then there's gun, because then once you start using firearms, then they get more stressed out, obviously, because there's loud noises and stuff. Whereas with a bow, I guess they won't know if, if other deer are getting shot by an arrow.
So with archery season is typically open a little bit earlier than rifle season, a little bit like a month and a half earlier. Usually those
Okay.
places where it's November only for rifle, maybe it's September 15th for bow and
Mm,
arrow for archery. I've done that. It's hard
yeah.
because the deer are only in rut really in November. That's when they start mating. So that when they're in
Oh,
mating season, they move around a lot. Earlier on in the season, especially in September, they don't really need to move around a lot. So you're not going to see them as often as
okay.
you will in November. So yeah, you can get out there and bow hunt, but a lot of the times you're just, sitting in a tree waiting for something to pass by, and nothing passes by. But yeah, you can go out with bow hunting a little bit earlier. It's harder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we are talking about 200 meters earlier. Before I got into shooting,
Mhm.
I thought 200 meters was so close because we're just like, oh, we're still talking about meters. When it gets
Mhm.
to maybe like a kilometer and things like that, oh yeah, that's far. 200 meters, like I could walk there, so like it's close.
Mhm.
But then I was like, no, that's actually even 50 meters when I'm like looking and shooting again because I have the iron sight too, so
Mhm.
can't even magnify anything. Um, I was like, this is so far. So now when I think about people saying they got a shot at 200 meters, even standing or sitting or prone, I'm like, that's still impressive to me.
Yeah.
It's still far. It's
Yeah, it's far.
crazy.
Most people shoot their deers within 100 meters.
Okay.
I've got a couple of farmers' fields that I hunt over. So and keep in mind, I've got the marksmanship fundamentals to be able to do
Yes.
this. But I've taken some very long shots on deer. My longest has been 650 meters, which is pretty far.
That's
That's like
very
well
far.
beyond what most people will ever do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
And you got that shot too?
yeah,
Okay. Because I
yeah.
was like, well, yeah, maybe you said you just tried, but completely missed. I was like,
No, that was with a rifle that I'd been doing a lot of precision shooting with. And I had it out
wow.
because, yeah, I think I can see a deer afar, and I saw one, and I had a laser rangefinder and a bunch of other equipment to be able to, calculate and make that shot.
And did you say you were standing, sitting, or
Oh no, prone with a
prone?
bipod for
Okay.
that. Yeah, no, for
Okay.
for a shot like that, yeah, I wouldn't dream of doing anything but the most stable position
Okay.
possible.
Yeah. Because standing, I was like, this looks like I don't even want to attempt to take a shot when I'm standing because it's moving so much.
Hmm.
It's so like it starts getting heavy. You wouldn't think about that, but when you're actually trying to take a pause and breathe through it and go through all the steps and stuff, I'm like, well, now I know I'm no longer on target because I'm shaking.
Yeah.
But
But that's when you see the deer when you're walking around. You're walking to your hunting spot. You're
that's
like, oh, there's a
true.
deer. What am I going to do? Am I going to.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna
Mhm.
crawl around everywhere. Yeah, yeah,
And
fair.
usually if you see it, it's also seeing you. So then now and they'll wait. They'll like, what is that? What is that? And they're like in that cycle through their head. So you got about 3 to 5 seconds where you can make that
Yeah,
shot where they're trying to figure out what you are and what's going on. So yeah,
yeah.
you can take a shot standing. I like to just drop to a knee, grab one knee because my shot is like 3 times more accurate from a kneeling position than standing. So
Interesting. Okay.
if I can, I'll take a knee and I'll shoot from a knee rather than standing.
Yeah, and you being able to shoot something anything at 650 meters, that says a lot about how much precision you've acquired over the years, and that leads us to um your expertise. I think a little bit more recent than
Mhm.
hunting, but in action shooting and the different competitions. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit more about the different options available for people for those types of shooting. And also what you do, like three
Mhm.
gun, a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, so there's actually been a rise in the number of shooting competitions that ranges are hosting. Used to be a lot of ranges, the shooting ranges, you can go there and shoot, but there's no competitions or anything like that. And then IPSC started to become more popular. IPSC is IPSC, that's handgun shooting. That one's actually got quite a few females in it because the
Okay.
gear requirements are low and the strength required is less than three gun and that kind
Yes.
of thing. Because with three gun, we've got shotguns and rifles and uh, fewer females in it. Still have some though. They're like I'm going to be going up to Peace River shortly here, and that's going to be for a 3 gun match, and that's using a pistol, like a handgun, a semi-automatic rifle, or we have some other ones that you can use, and then a shotgun. So I have a semi-automatic shotgun, semi-automatic rifle, and a handgun that I'm going to use while I'm out there. What the whole idea for those things is um, shooting for accuracy and speed. You need both. So you need to shoot quickly and
Mm,
accurately. So we'll have like a course of fire, some different targets and that kind of thing. These ones are pistol targets. These ones are rifle targets. These are shotgun targets over here. You go through, you do all your shooting, and we have these special timers that as you start on the timer, it beeps, and then you start doing the thing. It counts every time a shot happens. So then on your last shot, that's what your time is.
okay.
Yeah.
And
So
you're
that's
moving around doing that?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And there's
So
like obstacle and things like that, or like I guess like I don't know, like opening
oh
doors and
yeah,
stuff.
we have vehicles, a helicopter, all sorts of things. the just to like vary up the stages and get
Yeah.
fun with it, right? So some of these will be like hardcore, crawling in the mud style
Like army
stages.
style stuff.
Yeah, and then some are not like that. It's you're shooting some. It's all like paper targets and that kind of thing that we're shooting, and you're just running around a little obstacle course or whatever. But yeah, it varies in difficulty and varies in the style, I guess you could say.
That's very interesting because, well, I've seen a couple of like short videos on them, but it's a little bit difficult to understand when I don't know anything about them. Like, for example, I didn't know
Mhm.
how the timers worked or things like that. Or just like I see the same thing happening, but I'm like, I don't really know what's going on. But how do people do that? Do people do that in Canada? I'm assuming yes, because you do three gun,
Mhm.
but you had handguns from before. So like now if I wanted to get into any of those, I can get a handgun. So can I maybe do I use a PCC? Like how
Yeah, yeah, you would use a PCC.
which obviously you
Yeah, I'll just pop one up. So it's a rifle that shoots pistol bullets instead. And this is what I would recommend for someone who doesn't have a handgun and wants to get started in three gun is to get a PCC, get a cheap pump shotgun, anything that takes chokes, and then that's it. That's all you need for most of the clubs that we have around Edmonton. There's two clubs around Edmonton that run three gun matches every month. So Sherwood Park's one of them. Chaz, west of Edmonton, is the other one, which is special. There's no other city in Canada that has as much three gun as we have in Edmonton.
That's awesome. And if I wanted to get started in it, but I don't want to get into doing it with an actual competition yet, even though you said you don't have to be that good at it. How do I like do it by myself in terms of like going to the range and like setting up a target? Like I don't know, can I get like that timer somewhere, like download an app or something? Or how do people prepare, basically train for it by themselves first and then go to those competition?
So you need a range where you can do those stages. And Chaz and Sherwood Park, you can't do those
Oh,
on
you
your own,
oh
not on
you
your own.
can't.
Only as part of a
Oh,
match, an event, can you do that.
okay.
So now what do you do? Well, for most of us, when we practice doing something called dry fire. We practice the reloads and the pointing and the transitions and the movement in our basement with no real bullets. So we'll just grab a firearm, make sure it's empty, and then we'll go through all of our like practicing pulling it up to our shoulder and changing mags out of it and all that kind of stuff. So we'll practice that stuff in our basement, and then when we use real bullets, we go to the range and we do a match.
Oh, so you don't even, so you just basically practice your precision separately to
Mhm.
make sure that you standing shoot at the target and it works, and then you practice your like, movement separately
Yep.
by dry firing. And when you say dry firing, like, do you press on the trigger without anything in it, or do you
Yes.
not even, okay, you do.
Yeah, you'll still press the trigger because you want to practice that trigger press and make sure that it's accurate every time. The other place you can practice these, Sherwood Park has Thursday night fun shoots. Well, they're done
Yep,
for
the
the
year.
year, but usually they'll do that as well, where they have these Thursday night fun shoots, and you can go there and do some quick practice.
Okay. And the last thing I wanted to ask about competition is I heard about the black badge
Mhm.
and I want to know what that is.
So that's the practical course that they have for IPSC, that handgun course.
Mhm.
They are also doing it for PCC. So IPSC has a PCC division, which you can also shoot. So for that one, you can do this black badge. It's a 2-day course, and they primarily show you how to handle them safely and how to compete safely. There's a couple things
Okay.
that we do to like, because we're running around with loaded guns, right? That sounds really,
Yes.
really dangerous. And it's not, as long as everyone follows the same rules. You can't move with your finger on the trigger, and you can't ever point uprange from your location. So
Okay.
when you're down range, you can point at an 89 degrees, but if you point a little bit too much and now you're pointing up range, oh, stop, you're disqualified. And you
Okay.
don't get to shoot, or you don't get to do anything else for the day. You're done.
Because you're done. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So we
Oh,
maintain, like, it's very strict, but you need it to be strict because we're running around with loaded guns. So that's what
yeah.
black badge does, is teach you how to do all that stuff safely in an environment where it's a learning environment. So if you
Okay.
have a PCC, you could totally do that. You could totally go do a black badge that's set up for that. Ken Hum P3 shooting specialties, they do that out of Edmonton, and they have PCC courses available as well.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure if it was like a course or like a when you say badge, it's like something you earn or something. But so now bringing it.
You can earn it, but like when I did mine, they didn't even give me anything. I didn't get a
Oh,
badge or nothing. I just get a number.
you're
You're
like
AB, blah blah
completed.
blah. Yeah, you've
Okay.
done it. Yeah.
So now just like bringing it back to kind of like beginner like guns. What would you recommend as a beginner gun or a few options? And then also that would be my last question is
Mhm.
what would be like kind of different, like quickly different guns for maybe like again a beginner one, maybe a hunting one for like small game, big game, and then maybe a competition one. And it doesn't have to be like too specific.
Yeah. So for a start, I would get a 22, a
Yeah.
semi-automatic 22. This looks fancy. This is a Ruger 1022. It's mag fed. It's got a scope, which it sounds very tactical. No. It's for marksmanship practice. It's for small game. It's for grouse. It's for squirrels, gophers, all that kind of stuff. It's just a semi-automatic 22 with a
The
sling.
bullet is
Carry it.
tiny for this one, so it's not
Yeah,
that
yeah,
scary.
yeah. The bullet can be here's an even smaller one. Here's a 22 short. That's a real small weapon there.
Oh,
Yeah, but this is what I'd recommend for small game and that kind of thing. For hunting deer, I would just get a Savage Axis. So a Savage Axis is one of these guys here. It's a center fire bolt action rifle. You want to watch for sales, especially around Black Friday. All the guns, you don't think about it, but yeah, Black Friday is a thing even for guns. But this is a very accurate firearm, and you can hunt deer and that kind of thing with it.
and what's the, I guess the term is, what's the caliber on this?
They sell them in a variety, and they're all okay for deer.
Okay.
All of
If
them.
you,
For
so
anything from 243, 6.5 Creedmoor is very popular. It's got less recoil, and it's still just as deadly for deer. So that's the one I would recommend if you were to pick one up today.
so if somebody was like, oh, well, I'm just gonna get one gun for like a deer and like a bear,
Moose and that
moose,
kind of thing.
yeah, kind of like just like one, or would that not work? Would
No,
one that
that
be
one will work for all of them. Yeah,
okay?
if you wanted to shoot long range on elk and moose, you might want to get something else, something with a little more power. But
Mm,
most people don't do those shots anyways. Most people are within 100 yards, and with 100 yards, practically any center fire cartridge will work, especially any
okay.
center fire cartridge that your common hunting rifles come in. They're all going to be
Okay.
okay. You
Okay.
just don't want something that's high recoiling that you get too much recoil and then you anticipate and you flinch and you don't get good accuracy, or you're scared of shooting it. Like, you don't want any of those things. So that's why I always recommend something that's a little bit lighter on recoil, like 6.5 Creedmoor, or 243 is okay, but I don't think I would use that on moose or elk. It's just a little bit too small.
Yeah, and if it's too much recoil as well, I'm going back to again, I'm like 5'1". I'm a small
Mm-hmm.
person. I'm not super strong either. I need to have still control over the gun. So if
Mm-hmm.
I can't have that, I'm like, I don't want to use
Yeah.
something that's gonna control me instead.
Yeah. This 243 is the one that my kids use. My kids use this for
Okay.
deer. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And again, if they're like 12, 13 and they're able to handle it, I'd say like that's a
They're
pretty
smaller
good.
than you.
I'm
I
sure
think you could take it. Yeah.
they might be a little stronger, but but yeah, that was we covered like so much on all the different aspects. I guess that's how it is when it's like basics of different things, because I
Mm-hmm.
can't go too deep. I don't know have the knowledge for it yet. Neither does my audience, but we have so many questions on different things. So thank you so much for answering everything. And I was like, oh, maybe should we do it in person, online? I'm glad we did it online so that you could actually show us the
Yeah.
different guns and things like that.
Yeah.
Now I'll give you a couple of minutes to talk more about anything that you have so much going on. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know which one you want to
Oh,
talk about,
well,
what you do, how people can find you, everything
mhm.
kind of.
Yeah, I'm the hunting gear guy on online. So that's YouTube, website, all that kind of stuff. The training, so the PAL and RPAL courses in the Edmonton area, I do those under HGG, firearms training, hunting gear guy. So it's all just kind of connected, right?
Oh, okay. I'll put
Yeah,
all
so
the links as well.
yeah, for sure. And then maple seeds, we're done those for the year. But if in 2025, for any of your listeners who, even if you don't have a firearms license, I'd really recommend getting one of those because it's a great experience. And I'm a little bit jealous of the students that get to do them because I didn't get to do it until I was in like my 30s, and I'd already done lots of hunting and shooting. And if I had done that course earlier, I would have been a better shot for a longer time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So take a look at that in 2025. We do those all over the country. Yeah, strongly recommend those. Good time.
Amazing. And again, your podcast every Wednesday. I think
Oh,
it's
right.
live every
Yep.
Wednesday, right?
You
It's on
bet.
Fire
Yep.
Radio with Kelly and I believe, is it
Tony,
Trevor?
Kyle. Oh,
Oh,
Trevor used to be on the show.
oh,
Yeah, but
Tony and Kyle.
yeah,
Okay.
Tony
I'm
and Kyle, and sometimes Dave comes on, and
I was like, I'm still listening to like some of the previous episodes
Mhm.
too. Like I'm still like catching up to it. And then sometimes I'm just listening, so I have no idea who's talking. Like,
Mhm.
well, obviously Kelly, I would know, but I was like, I don't know, but it's just great information. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, there's 500 episodes in there, so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of backlog.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
I'm going.
covered pretty much every topic on it too. Yeah. So if there's a topic around shooting that you're curious about, we have a podcast on it. If you're driving out to the
Perfect.
range or something like that, or if you're going to be in the car for a while,
Yeah.
search that episode out. We probably have one for it.
Amazing. And again, I'll put all those links in the description so people can
Cool.
have it. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching or listening too. I hope you got plenty of, no, I'm sure you did plenty of knowledge on today's episode. And if you have any questions, send them my way. I can send them Adriel's way as well to get them answered. But yeah, I'm sure a lot more people will be like, huh, I want to try that thing now, that like shooting thing, that hunting thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I'll let you know once I get into hunting how it is. And I'll see you at next year's Mapleseed as well. I'm excited to come and I'll get better during this year, and
Mhm.
then hopefully next year I can, even if I don't, I can aim for getting the patch, and then even if I don't get it, then I'll come back next year to get it.
For sure.
But
Yeah.
amazing. Again, thanks everyone
Awesome.
for watching, and thank you for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.